having seen what is going on right now in Hollywood and across all these singers and the information coming out about P. Diddy, Justin Bieber, Taylor Swift, and it just keeps going on. We're going to deep dive today into the CIA and the history of something called Project Monarch. After World War II, the U.S. Department of Defense secretly imported many of the top German Nazi and Italian fascist scientists and spies into the United States via South America and the Vatican. The code name for this operation was Project Paperclip. One of the most prominent finds for the U.S. was German General Reinhard Gehlen, Hitler's chief of intelligence against Russia. Upon arriving in Washington, D.C. in 1945, Gehlen met extensively with President Truman. He also met with Director of the Office of Strategic Services, General William Wild Bill Donovan, and Allen Dulles, who would later become the stalwart head of the CIA. The objective of their brainstorming sessions was to reorganize the nominal American intelligence operation, transforming it into a highly efficient covert organization. This, my friends, was the culmination of their efforts, and it produced the Central Intelligence Group in 1946, renamed the Central Intelligence Agency, or CIA, in 1947. Richard Gehlen also had profound influence in helping to create the National Security Council, from which the National Security Act of 1947 was derived. This particular piece of legislation was implemented to protect an unconscionable number of illegal government activities, including clandestine mind control programs. With the CIA and National Security Council firmly established, the first in a series of covert brainwashing programs was initiated by the Navy in the fall of 1947. Project Chatter was developed in response to the Soviet successes through the use of truth drugs. This rationale, however, was simply a cover story in case the program was to be exposed. The research focused on the identification and testing of such drugs for use in interrogations and the recruitment of agents. The CIA decided to expand their efforts in the area of behavior modification with the advent of Project Bluebird, approved by Director Allen Dulles in 1950. Its objectives were clear. 1. Discover a means of conditioning personnel to prevent unauthorized extraction of information from them by known means. 2. Investigate the possibility of control of an individual by application of special interrogation techniques. 3. Investigate memory enhancement. 4. Establish defensive means for preventing hostile control of agency personnel. In August of 1951, Project Bluebird was renamed Project Artichoke, which evaluated offensive uses of interrogation techniques, including hypnosis and drugs. The program ceased in 1956. 3 years prior to the halt of Project Artichoke, Project MKUltra came into existence, April 13, 1953. A host of German doctors procured from the post-war Nazi talent pool were an invaluable asset toward the development of MKUltra. The correlation between the concentration camp experiments and the numerous sub-projects of MKUltra are clearly evident. The various avenues used to control human behavior under MKUltra included radiation, electroshock, psychology, psychiatry, sociology, anthropology, graphology, harassment substances, and paramilitary devices and materials, including LSD, being the most widely dispensed material. A special procedure designated MK Delta was established to govern the use of MKUltra abroad. MKUltra Delta materials were used for harassment, discrediting, or disabling purposes. Of the 149 sub-projects under the umbrella of MKUltra, Having been identified, Project Monarch, officially begun by the U.S. Army in the early 1960s, although unofficially implemented much earlier, appears to be the most prominent and still classified as top secret. Project Monarch may have culminated from MK search subprojects such as Operation Spellbinder, which was set up to create sleeper assassins who could be activated upon receiving a keyword or phrase while in post-hypnotic trances. Operation Often, a study which attempted to harness the power of occultic forces, was possibly one of several cover programs to hide the insidious reality of Project Monarch. The name Monarch is not necessarily defined within the context of royal nobility, but rather refers to the monarch butterfly. When a person is undergoing trauma induced by electroshock, a feeling of lightheadedness is evidenced as if one is floating or fluttering like a butterfly. There is also a symbolic representation pertaining to the transformation or metamorphosis of this beautiful insect, from a caterpillar to a cocoon to a butterfly, which will return to its point of origin. Such is the migratory pattern that makes this species unique. Occultic symbolism may give additional insight into the true meaning. Psyche is the word for both soul and butterfly, coming from the belief that human souls become butterflies while searching for a new reincarnation. Some ancient mystical groups, such as agnostics, saw the butterfly as a symbol of corrupt flesh. The angel of death in agnostic artworks was portrayed crushing the butterfly. A marionette is a puppet that is attached to strings as in controlled by a puppet master. Hence, Monarch Programming is also referred to as the marionette syndrome. Imperial conditioning is another term used, while some mental health therapists know it as conditioned stimulus response sequences. Project Monarch could be best described as a form of structured disassociation and occultic integration in order to compartmentalize the mind into multiple personalities within a systematic framework. During this process, a satanic ritual, usually including Kabbalistic mysticism, is performed with the purpose of attaching a particular demon or group of demons, aka a legion, to the corresponding altar. Of course, most skeptics would view this as simply a means to enhance trauma within the victim, negating any irrational belief that demonic possession actually occurs. Another way of examining this convoluted victimization of body and soul is by looking at it as a complex computer program. A file or altar is created through trauma, repetition, and reinforcement. In order to activate or trigger the file, a specific access code or password, cue, or command is required. The victim survivor is called a slave by the programmer handler, who in turn is perceived as a master or guide. 75% are female, since they tend to disassociate easier than males. Subjects are used mainly for cover operations, prostitution, and pornography. Involvement in the entertainment industry is notable. There are an inordinate amount of altars in the victim survivor, with numerous backup programs, mirrors, and shadows. A division of light side, good, and dark side, bad. Altars are interwoven in the mind and rotate on an axis. One of the main internal structures, of which there are many within the system, is shaped like a double helix, consisting of 7 levels. Each system has an internal programmer which oversees the gatekeeper, demon, who grants or denies entry into the different rooms. A view of the internal images predominantly seen by victims, survivors, or trees. The Kabbalistic tree of life with adjoining root systems, infinity loops, ancient symbols and letters, spider webs, mirrors, glass shattering, masks, castles, mazes, demons, monsters, aliens, seashells, butterflies, snakes, ribbons, bows, flowers, hourglasses, clocks, robots, chain of command diagrams, and or schematics of computer circuitry boards. Now, I would ask you now, in your mind, to think about some of the more recent music videos that are coming out of Hollywood and how many of the preceding items I mentioned you might have recently seen as a symbolism or symbolic gesture that this Project Monarch is happening to that singer. The ultimate purpose of this sophisticated manipulation of these individuals may sound unrealistic depending upon our interpretive understanding of the physical and spiritual realms. The deepest and darkest altars within these bloodliners are purported to be dormant until the Antichrist is revealed. These New World Order altars supposedly contain callback orders and instructions to train and or initiate a large influx of people, possibly clones or soulless ones, thereby stimulating social control programs into the new millennium. Non-biological twinning is yet another bizarre feature observed within Monarch Programming. For instance, 2 young non-related children would be ceremoniously initiated in a magical soul-bonding ritual so they might be inseparable, paired for eternity. Possibly another mingle condition. They essentially share 2 halves of the programmed information, making them interdependent upon one another. Paranormal phenomena such as astral projection, telepathy, ESP, etc. appear to be more pronounced between those who have undergone this process. There are levels of Monarch Programming: Alpha, Beta, Delta, Omega, Gamma. It is difficult to figure out who the original programmer of this satanic project was, due to the substantial amount of disinformation and cross-contamination propagated by the powers that be. It is most likely Dr. Mengele, whose direct involvement at the infamous Auschwitz concentration camp was suspiciously downplayed during the Nuremberg trials, and consequently, no intensified effort by the U.S. and its allies was directed toward his capture. As a means to confuse serious investigators as to his whereabouts, U.S. officials would report Mengele being a non-threatening recluse in Brazil, or that he was simply dead. His unprecedented research at the expense of thousands of lives was a significant bonus to U.S. interest. Besides using the pseudonym of Dr. Green, survivors knew him as Daddy, Beautiful Joseph, David, and Fairchild. He was a gracefully handsome man of slight stature. Mengele would disarm people with his gentle demeanor, while at other times he would explode into violent rage. Of course, there's always more pieces on the chessboard than one, right, folks? Dr. D. Ewan Cameron, also known as Dr. White, was the former head of the Canadian, American, and World Psychiatric Associations. Because of Cameron's extensive experience and credentials, the CIA's Alan Dulles funneled millions of dollars throughout organizations like the Society for the Investigation of Human Ecology, which Cameron ruthlessly presided over. Experimentations were conducted at several locations in Montreal, mostly at McGill University, St. Mary's Hospital, and Allen Memorial Institute. Besides the conventional methods of psychiatric tyranny, such as electroshock drug injections and lobotomies, Cameron conceived the technique of psychic driving, where unsuspecting patients were kept in a drug-induced coma for several weeks and administered a regimen of electroshocks, while electronic helmets were strapped to their heads and repetitive auditory messages were transmitted at variable speeds. Many of these exploited or abused children, which have been run through the Roman Catholic orphanage system. Not surprisingly, Dr. Cameron has been conveniently left out of most psychiatric journals. This may have been, in fact, largely due to Project MKUltra being publicly exposed in 1970 through lawsuits filed by Canadian survivors and their families. The CIA and Canadian government settled out of court so as not to be required to officially admit to any wrongdoing. One of the first documented cases of a Monarch secret agent was that of voluptuous 1940s model Candy Jones. Paul Bonanacci, a courageous survivor who endured almost 2 decades of degradation under Project Monarch, corroborating evidence of wide-scale crimes and corruption from the municipal state level all the way up to the White House. He has testified about inappropriate abuse, males selected from Boys Town in Nebraska and taken to a nearby Air Force base. From there, these children were moved by our military to the elite retreat, Bohemian Grove. Perpetrators took full advantage of these innocent victims, committing unthinkable perversions in order to satisfy their deviant lust. In conclusion, the most incriminating statement to date made by a government official as to the possible existence of Project Monarch was extracted by Anton Chatton, a writer for the publication The New Federalist. When former CIA Director William Colby was asked directly, "What about Monarch?" he replied angrily, "We stopped that between the late 60s and the early 70s. Suffice it to say that society in its apparent state of cognitive dissonance is generally in denial of the overwhelming evidence of this conspiracy. Numerous victims, survivors of Project Monarch, are in desperate need of help. However, the great majority of people are too preoccupied with themselves to show any genuine compassion toward these severely wounded individuals. Apathy has taken over the minds of the masses who choose to exist within the comforts of this world. Reality has them obscured by relativism and selfishness. Although there has been some progress in deprogramming and reintegrating therapies, a much greater problem needs to be recidified. The Holy Bible addresses this problem as a fragmentation of the soul, Ezekiel 13:20. A spiritual restoration is what is truly needed, Psalm 23:3. But that can only take place by completely trusting in Jesus Christ as the way to salvation, John 3:16, 1 Peter 3:18, and the deliverance from demonic oppression and or possession, Mark 16:17. The true humility of Christ and the love of God effectively counters the pride and hatred of Satan. Statistically, the road to recovery for these survivors of unimaginable depravity is a long and tedious one, but God is the ultimate healer, and only within His time, through His strength, and by His grace can the captives be set free, of Isaiah 61:1. God bless you guys. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Hello everyone. My name is Samantha, and this video was made by me. Project Monarch by Ron Patton, Patton, is where I got my research. You can locate that online. Some of the video clips in this video, the movie type ones, came from Spy Kitten TV, the young lady I spoke of earlier today. For the ones of you that watched this all the way through, God bless you. Please share it. This video took a lot out of me, guys. Knowing what our government has done and is still doing, especially to our children, is mind-blowing. Imagine if the world continues in 25 years when they find something called Project Pronoun. Let that sink in. Love you guys. Good night.